Tanshi Kiowa. Hello, how are you all? Welcome to Homelands, originally broadcast on CFCR Community Radio, 90.5 FM in Saskatoon, Homelands of the Métis and Treaty 6 territory, cfcr.ca. This is your favorite auntie, Andrea Letting Dijini Kashoon. Call me Auntie Andy if you like, and I'll be your host today. I'm part settler, part relative, and 100% ally to everyone. I'm just me, not a card-carrying member of any Indigenous nation, but I am loved, adopted by, and related to many, rejected by a few, haters gonna hate, relators gonna relate. I have Indigenous family relations and may secretly love them a little bit more than all the rest, but only because they are the first peoples of this land who have welcomed all the guests. I am also Irish and Scandinavian with the serving of mystery, and that's the way I was raised, strongly decolonial with a strong sense of justice and a big related heart for all. I mostly relate to my Batoche Métis friends and family and culture, and have continued to try and live that beautiful good life that Mio Pimatiswin. So from the fringes of the sash, I situate myself as relative and ally, and welcome you, my listeners, as brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, cousins, relatives in the homelands. And I welcome my relative today, brother from another mother, my good friend Daniel Hanover Knight from Muskoday First Nation. Welcome, Danny. And
Hello.
I'll read his bio here. He is an actor, musician, comedian, writer, director, many hats, and correspondent for the satirical news show The Feather News. He has attended and graduated from GTNT's Circle of Voices program, Youth Ensemble, Red Spirit, and Fire Spirit programs. He held an artist residency at Persephone Theatre where he studied script work, sound design, administration, marketing, and acting. His theater acting credits include Thunderstick at Globe Theatre. This is how we got here at Persephone Theatre. Dominion, yay! My play at GTNT. A History of Breathing at Persephone Theatre. Hawk, or How He Learned to Play His Song at One Light Theatre. Directing credits include Leave It to Weavers with GTNT, Megawin the Gift, GTNT, Remnants, Burnt Thicket Theatre, and his film credits include the award-winning short film Torch Narrows, as well as Feathers Season 1 on APTN. Danny Knight is also featured on season 3 of Acting Good on CTV. Make sure you catch all that. So, Danny has been also playing music with his father, Chester Knight, since he was 16, touring across Canada and the United States. He has a band called Night Switch with his brother Lancelot Knight and is currently working on his debut album. Comedy highlights include opening for Sean Majumder, John Dory, and featuring at the Laughter's Medicine Comedy Festival. Daniel also dabbles in poetry writing for CBC. You can find his poems online and at the Happy Canada Day and I Vote Because I Dream. So I wasn't sure for a second if those were instructions, but I think that's where you can find the poetry. So
Yeah, that's the titles of them. Yeah.
yeah, okay, there we go. All right. Well, welcome, Danny. Anything
Thank
else you
you.
want to add to that bio or introduction or?
Well, since I wrote and gave it to you, I think everything I need to say is there.
Yeah, I should be clear. The credits for that bio go to Danny. I did not make it up. So yeah. Yeah, really happy to have you here. So tell us a little bit about everything. Like, so did music lead to acting, lead to directing, or did it kind of all come together for you, or kind of what came first? And
Music came first. It's actually a really cute story. I think I was about 15 or 16, and my dad was getting married to my stepmom Brenda, and for the first dance at the wedding, he wanted to sing a song he wrote for her, and he wanted to play it live with the band. My brother Lance had been taking music lessons for about a year, so he got him to play guitar. My dad's like, just threw me a bass. He's like, learn how to play this instrument, learn how to play this song. You got 3 days. And we played it, and it was really good, and I had so much fun, and it was a really beautiful moment for my whole family for that to happen. It was really gorgeous.
that's amazing. That's a great
Yeah.
story for that. So that's kind of how that was your big first performance kind of thing, hey? Or,
Yeah, yeah, and then my dad was struggling with musicians. Like, I don't know if you know many musicians, but a lot of them have like substance abuse issues, gambling problems, and stuff like that. And so he had a hard time touring with his band because they just would, they'd be like, Chester, I need an advance. Chester, I'm out of money. Chester, I'm across town at some house party. I need you to come pick me up. And he got fed up looking after a bunch of musicians like they were his own kids, but he couldn't really tell them what to do, so he just decided to hire his own kids so he could tell them what to do. And yeah, so I spent my like high school summers touring across Canada and the States playing music with my dad, with Lance a lot too, and it was a really wonderful, wonderful experience.
So were you lead guitar or bass or kind of,
Bass. I
yeah.
play bass. Yeah. I think one of the things that people say would be like, "Whoa, that bass player can move. I've never seen a bass player move like him before," which is kind of funny. Because yeah, bass players usually just sit there and bob their head, but I was like dancing on stage basically.
Yeah, yeah, bass players kind of have that reputation. They're the ones that you don't invite to the party. They get all the jokes made about them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then I went to university at the First Nations University Canada here and at the Saskatoon campus. And after my first year, we still had Brad Wall as our premier back in the day, and then he had shut down funding for the Saskatoon campus. And we were like doing a big protest for it and stuff like that, and being all mad and whatever. And the only way that I could continue my studies is if I moved to Regina, and I was like, I don't want to move to Regina. So I pivoted into acting at the Gordon Tutusniganyewan Theatre, which was called the Saskatchewan Native Theatre at the time.
That's really interesting. So basically, Brad Wall's closure of FNUC was how you became an actor.
Yeah, yeah. I had I had done the Circle of Voices program when I finished high school when I was 19, and I had a lot of fun doing that, and got a lot of experience from it. And then just acting roles started to come in when I was like, oh, do I got to go to Regina? And then I think it was like I got a contract offer the same month that the semester would have started. So I was like, well, am I going to spend money to go to Regina, or am I going to make money and stay in Saskatoon? So I went with the second option.
Right on. And do you find that there's a lot of parallels between performing on a stage for music and performing on a stage acting, or what do you find same and different?
That's actually a good question. So I do comedy too now, and the parallels between music, acting, and comedy are there's a stage and there's people there watching you, but they're all incredibly different when it comes to performance. Like when you're a musician, you work for free a lot, right? You don't really get paid very much. And if you do, it's split between a band and you got to rehearse if you want to sound good, and you don't get paid for rehearsals. And you got to have a good team beside you, you know what I mean? You all got to be like-minded individuals. And you got to be on key and you got to be on time. It's actually pretty stressful. Like the moments when you're on stage are really cool, but everything leading up to it, there's a lot of preparation and work that goes into it. And yeah, and you spend hours on end to deliver a nice set, and then you play music, you finish your song, people like it, you get that applause, it feels nice. But at the same time, there's always a lot of big personalities when it comes to musicians because there's no like regulated kind of like schooling for it and stuff like that. There's no really like a band will form. So many bands form and die because of relationship issues and stuff like that. So you got to make sure you have a good like-minded people if you want to have a good successful band. And yeah, you got to practice your scales every day. Practice your instrument every day. So it's a lot of work. But creating, I think my favorite part about music is just creating music and performing it with people. For people is more of like a byproduct of it for me, because it's like you create all this stuff, you really fall in love with all the stuff you create, and if you just show it to yourself, it's like, well, what's the point? So you got to show it to the people, and yeah, so that's kind of how music is. Yeah, and then also you got to like haul your instruments all over the place, and nobody gives you gas money. Nobody has cars. You got to organize that stuff. Not all musicians have licenses. It's such a mess. So it's always tough. It's tough to be a musician, to be a
I can
functioning
relate.
musician.
I was a band mom for quite a while. One of my sons is a musician, and had the minivan with all the equipment in it driving all over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a labor of love being a musician for sure. And then like the pitfalls of the industry are like, are just insane. You know what I mean? Like with streaming music and stuff like that. So I find that a lot of bands are hard to make work, but if you're a solo producer, it's much more easier because you can just only have to rely on yourself and stuff like that. And when it comes to performing as an actor, it's so much more cushy. You know what I mean? Because you get lots of rehearsals, and you get paid for rehearsals. And you have and most working actors are really good people. Like they have really strong relationship skills and interpersonal skills and stuff like that. And everybody wants to succeed, so everybody has a shared vision of delivering a good show. So it's like the personality clashes aren't really there, and if they are there, there's mitigating factors for them. You have stage managers, directors, artistic directors, and usually, well, working here in Saskatchewan, I know a lot of theater companies have a lot of what are the words? What's the word?
Intimacy coordinators and all.
Yeah, there's just a lot of people there to help you if anything happens, and then there's always like emails being like, "Hey, just checking in how rehearsals are going, how's the vibe, how you're feeling working with these people. Is there anything?" There's a lot of check-ins with you and how you're doing and stuff like that. So
Well, yeah,
it's
and
really great.
it makes sense because theater is about people, and the people that are in theater study people. So they're really, really good at kind of identifying. They really got strong people skills, right? Because that is theater is conveying people and becoming other people. So yeah. Yeah, that's
Definitely.
interesting. I never really thought about musician, but I mean even like I know like from my son playing shows, like usually the bars, like because that's where the shows are, they're like, we'll pay you in drink tickets. And so it's like
Yeah,
like
let's give you an alcohol addiction to go along with your passion, right?
yeah,
It's an
exactly.
awesome Pavlovian effect to
Yeah.
tie a feeling of inebriation with the feeling of adulation. Oh my God.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, for sure. It's a fraught kind of, drug, sex, rock and roll kind of pitfalls, so
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
and that's
And then when
not
it comes to like performing a play, it's kind of the same sort of struggles are there, like about like being on time with your and being on rhythm, remembering your lines, delivering the right actions that you've been given by a director, and then you have to rely on your teammates too, right? And sometimes, and people, we make mistakes all the time. We're full of fallacies as human beings, so you got to be ready too. If like someone drops a line, or if you drop a line, to be able to create something spontaneous to get back on track. So that is also stressful, but also it could be very rewarding experience too. And then also you got to be mindful of all your cues. You got to be mindful of all your props. I did this show called Mustard this year for 25th Street Theater, and we were in tech rehearsals, which is like a little. I guess I'll talk about that a little bit. Like when you rehearse a play, you're just rehearsing in a room. You don't have any set pieces. There's just like you got to use your imagination for how things work. But then eventually you move into the space, you get set, you get props, you get lights, you get sound, and you have to work all that into your rehearsals that you've been doing it with, and then it's only like three or 4 days you get to have with that stuff. So it's a very intensive it's process. You end up working like 12-hour days, maybe depending on the company, from 2 to 3 times, and it's very tedious and very painstaking. But you got to be able to deliver everything all at once. And when we were doing Mustard, I had gotten this prop. It was a bag full of feathers, and I'm supposed to throw it to the main character. And during tech rehearsal, I think, or it was a dress rehearsal, we did it. I had forgotten my prop backstage. And I was like, oh shit, this is in the script. What am I going to do? But I copped out and I just mimed throwing something to him. And then I got a very big note from the director to be like, remember your props. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Yeah, totally. I'll remember it. And then something funny that happens too when you're what? So another time we did a run on the show for the director. I had thrown the bag kind of like forcefully, and some of the feathers flew out of the bag. And the director was like, "Hey man, I love that. Keep that in. That's amazing." And then as we did the run of the play, I they had changed the bag after that, so throwing it wasn't working, and so no feathers were falling out when I throw the bag. And finally, it was like the third last show, maybe the fourth last show of the run. I found a way to throw it so the feathers would come out. But by that time, the actor who I was throwing the bag to had gotten so accustomed to how I was doing it that when the feathers flew out, it kind of sent him for a loop. He was like, "Oh no," because his character would have to clean up all these feathers and then get ready for the next scene all on stage. And when you're on stage doing stuff you practice a million times, like something new totally sucks and it's so hard to do. So I was like, after the show, I was like, "Hey man, I made the feathers fall out." And he was like, "Could you not do that, please?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I was kind of directed to." He's like, "Yeah, I know," but then he just told me about the whole process that it creates for him that we just didn't rehearse with, and I was like, "Yeah, it's fine, it's fair, very fair thing to ask me," and yeah, so it's easy. So the director didn't get what he wanted, unfortunately, but that was due to a bunch of unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah, there's something about theater where you're kind of in the moment, hey, but it's a very carefully rehearsed moment that has had a whole staircase of rehearsals leading up to it,
Yeah.
though it's supposed to feel spontaneous. Although one thing I noticed, like I tried to catch as many performances of Dominion as I could, and it felt like every performance was fresh, like because the audience is different, the lines will change a little bit, like in how they're said and the interactions. And so every theater experience kind of is new and live in a way, you
No,
know,
definitely.
really.
As an actor, you have to keep that material fresh to keep it real, right? So you're always a good actor, as Will Brooks would say, is always digging. So you work a scene, you learn your lines, you learn your motivations, but then you're always looking for, well, what else? Like a person in a moment has a million thoughts at once, right?
Mm.
So you gotta replicate that to create a true and good performance. So yeah, so it always does change a little bit every show, which is kind of magical.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the many things I love about live theater and live music. Um, so that's kind of comparing music and theater. How about comedy? How does it, how is it similar? How is it different to those two stage experiences?
Well, when you're doing music, if you're doing covers, you're doing somebody else's work. If you're writing your own music, it's great, but you're also working with other people to create the sound, so it's not entirely your own work. And with acting, you're saying someone else's line, someone else's belief. You're trying to understand and send that message across, which is great and it's cool if you believe in the message. But when you're doing comedy, you're your own writer, you're your own director. Everything you do on stage is very much your own. So it's a very vulnerable and liberating experience. When you do a play, if you have a hot scene, you get an applause afterwards, but usually you get your applause at the intermission and at the end. So it comes between within an hour. You can feel the energy of people in the audience enjoying it, but those moments of adulation are very few and far between. In music, it's after every song if they like the song. And with comedy, if you're having a hot set, those moments of adulations come at you at every 5 seconds because you're connecting with people. You see their eyes light up. You see their laughs. You hear their laughs. You feel their laughs, and it's probably the most addictive performance avenue I've been down because there's so much self gratification happening the whole time. And it's not that I do comedy for self gratification; it's just a byproduct of it that I very much enjoy. Yeah, comedy is probably my most valued performance out of all three that I do.
That's really interesting. And it's kind of you've just come to that in the last couple of years, would you say? Or have you kind of been always working on it? Like, were you the class clown or
No, I don't know. I've been doing comedy for about 8 years now, and up until maybe 2 years before becoming a comedian, I was a very serious artist. You know what I mean? I was also like I'm a very loud and boisterous person, maybe a little flamboyant. I don't think, and when it comes to my interpersonal skills, I don't take things too seriously. So, but I had a different version of me as an artist, and I always thought artists had to be very serious, very deep, and always brooding and thinking about the world and when they can change and stuff like that. But I'd come off this show in Regina called Thunderstick, written by Kenneth T. Williams, and it was also at a huge turning point in my life. My home life had kind of fallen apart. My relationship with the mother of my child had fallen apart, and when I had fallen apart right before I went on to do the contract, and when I came home to like an empty house, and I had to like face all the real consequences of not being a family with this person anymore and saying goodbye to a future you thought you're going to live towards. And it was very heavy. It was a very I don't know. I guess I was just kind of destroyed after that experience. So I climbed my way back, but by then I kind of realized that since I'd created this in my mind like a fake persona of what I thought an artist was, and it was a person I could be when I was on a project, it just wasn't. I wasn't facing the world as Danny at the same time. So I kind of had like an epiphany moment there, being like, oh, maybe being an artist is just being who you are or whatever, right? And then I'd seen Dakota, Dakota Ray Hebert, or Dakota Ray Williamson. She had started doing comedy, and like my whole life growing up, I'd been watching comedy specials since I was little and loving the art form, loved everything about it, and just kind of clicked to me in that moment when I saw Dakota doing it. I was like, hey, I could probably do this too. And it was in that moment when I was like kind of reforming who I am and what I want out of life. And I was like, I should do this. And my good buddy Sean Cuthand, my colleague as well, he's the artist in residence at, or the Indigenous storyteller in residence at the U of S right now. We had seen Dakota perform, and we went back to my place. We were smoking a bunch of weed, and we are like, we should fucking tell jokes. Sorry for swearing. We should heckin' tell jokes, brother. And he's like, yeah. So we started writing jokes, just like hanging out, going back and forth, and having such a great time. And we went to comedy about two more times, and I felt that I was ready to go. So I went first out of both of us and had an amazing first set. Sometimes that happens for people; they have really great first sets, and or some people have really bad first sets. I had a really amazing first set, and then the next week came by. I was like, "Hey, Sean, you go," and he's like, "Well, I'm not going to do it. I'm too scared." I was like, "Okay, well, if you don't go next week, I'm going to start telling your jokes because we were like writing together, right?" So finally, he goes up for his first set, and he he was going to walk on stage, and he missed a step, and he fell off stage.
Oh no. That's not
But
how you want
Sean,
to start things
that's not how
out.
you want to start anything. But Sean is he's a really resilient person, and he persevered. He got back on up on stage, and because he had made that mistake in front of everyone and laughed it off, everybody kind of loved him. And then he ended up having a really great set as well, and it was like so cute to see him fall but get back up and just deliver a strong performance.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story. And talk about resilience, hey?
Hmm.
But also, that he was able to kind of just shake that off and just like roll with it and go,
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
It's awesome, awesome. So you guys had started writing together, and then is that how the feather kind of came to be, or how did that come about?
Oh, the no, the feather was a way different animal that started. So me and Sean had been doing comedy for about 6 months, and there was a few other Indigenous comedians there, but so only some would come sometimes. But there was this other one who would come every time and give a really fun show every time. He had really hilarious jokes, and he had a nice, strong stage presence. And his name was Ryan Moccasin, and we would just chit chat at comedy shows. Hey, how's it going? Just making an acquaintance with him. But he had started this satirical blog, kind of modeled after the Beaverton and Walking Eagle News. But it was just he wanted to do it just as a writing exercise, he wanted to do fake news articles that spoke truth to power and turned our political system on its head, and would just make fun of all the weird policies that came out of the reconciliation calls, and just make fun of what people think Indigenous people are. And so he just had his little thing, and he wanted to do a video component for it. And he had actually asked Dakota to be the host first, and Dakota was already too big time. She's like, "Well, I don't work for free, so whatever." Luckily, I was right behind Dakota, I'd be like, "Hey, I'm an actor too." No, but so, anyways, I was his second choice, which is okay, which is really great. And so he was like, "Hey, Danny, do you want to be our video correspondent for this cool thing?" And then I was like, "Yeah, that'd be super cool." And then he was like, and then Sean's dad, Doug Cuthan, works in film and stuff like that. And Sean had access to a lot of great film tools, I guess, cameras, audio, yada yada yada, all that tech stuff. And Sean is and was a really great photographer and cinematographer. So Sean was actually the cameraman first. So it was Ryan the writer, Danny the performer, and Sean the cameraman. But we then Ryan then invited us to help him write the monologues and make edits to them. So we kind of created them all together, and we just did it for fun. We were just like, yeah, let's fucking sorry, I keep swearing. Let's just do this stuff. Let's just make our own videos. So we release videos on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and stuff like that, and achieved a little bit of success with that. People liked us. They thought we were funny. And then we were like, well, let's keep making these. So we just kept making them. And then initially we applied for because we wanted to do like a full length episode of The Feather instead of just doing monologues here and there. So we applied for some writing funding from the Saskatchewan Arts Board that we then got. And it was a really fun process writing the grant together and forming what The Feather, I guess, the seeds of what The Feather was going to be. We did it in Sean's house. It was Sean's dad's house, and we had some pizza. We did some writing, got the grant, and then we rewrote the first episode. And then I think months later, we applied for another grant, wrote another episode, filmed and recorded it. And so by then we had kind of had a cool format for our show. It was like the Daily Show and Chappelle's Show kind of mixed into one. And then APTN and Imagine Native, they partner for a film festival in Toronto every year. And at this particular year, they had a pitch competition. It was like, pitch us your show, and if you win the competition, you win a licensing agreement. So we were like, whoa, snap, let's do this. So we put together an electronic press kit. We put together a pitch, and we pitched it to APTN, amongst a whole bunch of others that pitched to APTN. And we ended up winning the competition and winning the licensing agreement. And then we became professional filmmakers, which is really cool. And then with that licensing agreement, we were able to leverage funding from the Indigenous Screen Office and Creative Saskatchewan to film our very first season of The Feather News. And our first season was insane. When I look back on it, it was insane to think that we could shoot 6 episodes with just a production team of 5 to 4 people. Oh yeah, and along the way, before we got to pitch, we had met up with Muskoday, and he has a huge background in tech. He edits for other shows on APTN and other places. And I actually knew him in high school. We were friends, and so it was nice to link up with him again and start creating things together. So the first season production was me, Ryan, Sean, and Muskwa. We had all written it together. I had directed a lot of it. Sean and Muskwa directed some of it too. And Ryan was a writer and producer type. So while we got to do all the super fun creative stuff, Ryan was there giving his input and stuff like that, but he was also working behind the scenes, working on budgets, working on applications, working on what's that stuff? When you go film somewhere, you got to get an
Oh
agreement
yeah, you
from
got to get all the
whoever.
permits and everything
Yeah,
like
permits, doing
that.
all the
Yeah,
permits and stuff like
yeah,
that, and
paperwork.
dealing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and dealing with like accountants and like all that heavy head shit that I'm like, I don't want to do. Ryan was there to do it and do a really great job. And Ryan Moccasin is such a great powerhouse when it comes to work. Like I never seen somebody with such a strong work ethic, which I think comes from his upbringing. He grew up on a farm, so he would have to wake up at 6 in the morning and then go to bed with the sun or whatever, right? And just always working. So he's always working all the time, and it is inspirational to see someone work so hard, and it kind of instills a little bit of his own work ethic in you just by working alongside him.
Totally. That's totally inspiring, and it kind of gets everything going. Well, we're actually so we've kind of gotten to the first break in our 1 hour um special on CFCR Homelands. That's the first half hour of our hour this Saturday morning, but we'll be right back on CFCR 90.5 FM with the second half with Danny Knight, sorry.
Danny White, I'll kill you, Andrea.
Big reveal.
I've been pretending all along.
This is a setup, man. Don't turn that dial. More shocking news from CFCR. We'll be right back.